Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Hellbender Vinyl. For those of you that don't know, Hellbender is a vinyl record pressing plant located right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, doing high quality, professional, top of the line record pressing, baby. We finally got one here. There aren't very many in the world, let alone the country, and to have one right under our nose is an insane resource. So if you are a musician looking to get some stuff pressed to wax, I highly recommend checking out the folks over at Hellbender. Tell them Sykes sent you. I've always wanted to say that. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Sit back, relax, and let's start the beats. Okay, we did it. All right, that's it. That was our podcast. Thanks for coming on.
All right.
Hell yeah. Nice.
Glad to help.
Yeah.
Screen test with Mike and Tim.
Yes. So today on the show, we're just gonna get right into it. This is my style. You know, we just do it.
Nice.
I am here with Mike and Tim of a collaborative, not a collective, a collaborative music project that I believe is pronounced LUNR ECCOS, but spelled silly.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, tight. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that for the sake of art or for the sake of like the Google algorithm or a little bit of both?
Mostly art. Thankfully.
Okay,
mostly
cool.
Art, yeah.
Yes. And you are doing an experimental, ambient, instrumental, rock, electronic fusion, just music, painting landscapes for the dreamers of the world, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess let's start with the Spider-Man origin story here, right? Like, how'd you two meet? Why are you making art? Why do you still make art? These are a lot of loaded questions. We're here to ask the tough ones.
Good.
Yeah.
Let me settle in. Yeah.
You take the lead. Let's go.
Yeah. So Mike and I actually met. We were both subbing on a blues gig. Is that pre End of Days?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. No, it must have been after.
I was moved here, so it had been 2021.
Yeah. So we subbed for an artist out of like Philly, Jersey, New York area. And didn't know each other, and we're both like, oh, where do you live? And oh, Pittsburgh. And oh, Pittsburgh, cool. So gig went well, and I think we both looked at each other afterward and said, hey, we should do something other than this.
Sure, we're neighbors.
Sub gig. Yeah. Seems like we have a lot of simpatico in what we like to do and how we like to work. So fast forward to winter 23. And, several years later, I forget, one of us texted each other and said, hey, I got some time. Do you want to finally get together and try to do something? And the other one said, yeah, actually, I have some time too. That sounds
Cool.
great.
I think I reached out first, and then we were both just busy with other stuff. And a year later, you were like, hey, I'm finally ready. Let's do something. I think that's how it went.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now that you say that.
Yeah.
And what was fun, you had pitched it to me as, bring every weird effect pedal you have that makes some like crazy noise that you've never been able to use ever. And anything you've done on any other gig in your life, don't bring that here. And let's try to figure out what we can do doing something that's totally out of our comfort zones and different and uncomfortable.
Cool. Yeah. I was going to say that's an interesting approach, and it is interesting from the standpoint of you two meeting each other through like doing like a blues gig is kind of just like, hired guns, I guess is a way to put it. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
And being able to do something where it's like you're in total control and there are no metaphorical rules or standards, especially with that stuff. You're probably playing a lot of music that they didn't even write, it's just like it's a historical sort of way of performing, and now you can kind of like write your own history, make up your own sort of thing, make your own carve your own path, do your own thing,
Yeah.
make weird sounds, have fun.
Yeah, you're not a slave to any of the motifs or history that came before you that you need to incorporate to be to represent that genre or to attract people who enjoy that kind of music.
Yeah, that's the thing that always kind of sucks about trying to commit to a particular genre of music, because sometimes you love that style of music, but I find that if like you are a real creative, you're going to want to do your own thing. And then there's always people that are like, well, you're not supposed to do that in this box. And it's like, says who? You know, why can't art evolve? So sometimes it's easier just to not even bother stepping in the box. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to go to metaphorical Home Depot and get metaphorical supplies and make my own box.
Yeah.
And if you want to come hang out in it, cool. You know?
Yeah.
It's not the best marketing decision, because now it's like, where do you play? Who are you? You even have to like choose your genre when you post the stuff online. Like, what is our genre? I mean, I didn't want it to be jazz, because that, again, there's so many rules, and that's my favorite music, and I'm not going to mess with that. I don't want to have to be a jazz artist. It's not electronic music, because I'm playing acoustic drums.
Yeah, I'm playing a guitar.
Right.
Yeah,
so
there's synthesized element.
It's not truly ambient. So we had no way. So yes, we're outside the box. Now we're alone. Like, where do we exist with this thing?
Yeah, and that was really freeing whenever we both were starting to get an idea of what this particular recording project was going to be, and starting to have some ways to describe the approach or the sound. We both agreed that, this is not marketable. We're not making this to try to go viral or anything. And that was really freeing in the sense that you could say yes to everything. Yeah. Did you like that? Yes, it was cool. You didn't have to try to co-sign it or say, oh, but how are people going to respond to that? Or what will radio stations think about that? Or will this play in the algorithm? Or any of those questions that I think whenever you're really making commercial success a critical component of the project. You get to bypass all that.
Yeah, I think that there's always space for the kind of stuff that you two are doing in terms of it not being easily, air quote, marketable. It's just a matter of getting it out there in front of people and playing shows, getting it in, just letting people know that it is a thing that exists. But it can be hard, like you said, when it's like, oh, I want to get somebody to review my album.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm in like a death metal band, it's like, okay, well, I'll hit up MrDeathMetalReviews.com or whatever, right? But if you're doing what you're doing, which is like instrumental rock, experimental rock, cool. I'm sure there's blogs that do that, but there's plenty of like instrumental rock bands. It's like, that's still like a wide spectrum, right?
Right. Yeah.
You have like stuff that's like very like technical from an instrumental rock standpoint. It's basically like, borderline just like tech demos.
Yeah. Right.
Like a band like, I don't know if you're like familiar with like Animals as Leaders or anything like that. Like,
exactly.
And that's like very like, that's like fancy pants knowledge music school stuff, and then there's other stuff like bands like Explosions in the Sky, post rock experimental stuff. So it's like, and you're not really in either of those camps, and those are music. I'm sure there's crossover there, and I'm sure there's people that listen to those bands that would like your band. So it's like, okay, but there's also people that are like that listen to something like Animals as Leaders that might listen to Explosions in the Sky and be like, oh, this is like little kid stuff. It's not aggressive enough. Yeah, I need a breakdown. I need all this over processed fucking guitar computer nonsense.
Well, that gets back
shout outs to them, by the way. They're really good at what they do.
But that's the box that we are avoiding. I think our only stipulation was that it has to be something we've never done before, and it should be I wanted to keep it something enjoyable to listen to, even if we're pushing the limits of what music is. I didn't want it to become so avant-garde that it's just noise. I didn't want it to be easy listening. So we our only box was just play whatever we feel and just make it enjoyable.
Yeah.
So it's not techie. Like maybe Tortoise might be the only band that I think we could maybe tour with.
If you're looking for an opener,
if you're ever getting back together and need an opener.
It's I think the thing that I could see being challenging for people in your position, where you're creating music that requires a certain amount of patience from a listener to get into. This isn't like TikTok, rest in peace, TikTok music, which is like, like you can like listen to 20 seconds of something that you're doing and you understand the full spectrum of who you are as a duo, right? That's not what's happening here. You need 20 minutes
at least,
maybe, right? To really take it in. And that's like asking a lot from a modern listener base.
Yeah.
But there are people that, are looking for those types of things still. So, I mean, you two aren't incredibly, this is going to sound meaner than I mean for it to, but you're not unique people. None of us are unique people. We're all pretty, average people that like a wide variety of things. And there's a lot of us.
Right.
So you just got to connect with those people.
Yeah. It's been a really interesting challenge. And I think as we went through, something we discovered, in that it is sort of soundtracky, and this sort
absolutely.
of, like you said, very, very astutely.
Landscape.
Yeah, we're painting landscape. So adding a visual element to it became really important. And that's something that's made booking shows with it a little bit of a challenge, is the right venue where we can create this immersive experience to accompany it. So it's not, again, here's a 4-minute song with a chorus that and you can sing along with, and it's going to be a very predictable thing. It's a, kind of submit to the experience and let yourself kind of be swept up in the visual, in the sound, in everything that's happening. And we're trying to present something a little bit more than this bite-sized, put it in your pocket and go about your day.
And you run into that issue where it's like, that what you're doing is cool and that it's unique, but getting people to take a chance on that, to book something without having seen it before, that's always the biggest challenge. But it's like, once you do it, it's like, oh, I like these guys, I understand what they're doing now. But like marketing that can be really complicated.
And something I know we said, talking to people that we worked with on the release show, or just different collaborators along the way, is, kind of think of this as like your Sunday through Thursday record. There's so many people competing for that like Friday, Saturday night spot, But this is something you can put on, and it can be a part of your life that's not like, on the weekend. And I think that opened a lot of people up to, okay, I understand how I might be able to fit this into where I have the time, I have the patience to experience it.
Yeah. So, in a live environment, because you have a lot going on, like sonically, but it is easy to tell that, for the most part, there are just two main instruments that are happening in the compositions that I've heard via the internet.
Yeah.
But I know there's probably a little bit of fun studio fluffing here and there on things, but in a live situation, it is still just you two. Or are you bringing on other players in a live situation?
No, just two of us.
And there's minimal actual fluff in the recording.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I brought in a good friend of mine who's a really creative mixer, but all he did was accentuate what we were already doing. Like, he was able to add some delay to bring out some things that I was playing on the toms that we can't produce live. But there's no overdubs, there's no layers, there's no edits.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And that was a really fun part of the process, because as you listen, some of these tracks are 12 to 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
And just two people live in a room, there's bleed. There's no overdubs. Because again, we're doing a lot of looping and things that are that are caught
so
in
that's
the
the kind of stuff that's like, so you're doing like live guitar looping and stuff like that. So that's what's actually adding
a lot of the
layers.
A lot of the layers, and you're doing a lot with electronics. So there's no way, it's all coming out of like one speaker. There's no way to cut it or clean it up.
Yeah.
So also, by virtue of it being incredibly heavily improvised every take, you really learn to live in the imperfection of it all. And that was a really rewarding part of this process, coming from recording projects where, I flubbed that note. Can we just go back and punch that? Or just cut that off? Or, we got it in another take. Can you just splice them together?
Gotcha.
all those things, that's not an option. And especially, the likelihood you're going to play for 20 minutes with no mistakes, that's unrealistic. Maybe it happened once or twice.
What's a mistake?
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's the other question. Yeah. Is that a mistake or just another, avenue to explore and jump off?
probably my favorite part on the record for me is when I hit the electronic pad too hard and it comes in so loud. And in the mix, you were like, make it louder, dude. Like whatever that was, because it ends up like going like across the stereo sphere.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. And I literally just hit the pad really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some times I flubbed the looper on the takes we ended up keeping, and I know where it happened, but otherwise it just sounds like cool, glitchy, kind of syncopated stuff
Sure.
to the untrained ear. And it's like,
Sure.
yeah, if I would have had this all exactly right as I would have premeditated and planned it and made none of that, well, that cool variability wouldn't have happened. And maybe I wouldn't have played everything I played after that because I wouldn't have responded to this weird glitchy thing that now is happening in the mix.
Mm-hmm. My the demon in my brain, if I was in your position, would have such a hard time like not wanting to approach some of this from like a very meticulous, overproduced standpoint. But that's just like how my brain goes. And I totally understand like where you two are coming from though with this approach. And I get it. And I'm wondering, have you dealt with that as well? Or has it been like from the jump, like this is how it's going to be? We don't want to get too fancy with the studio stuff.
I think early on we tried to fix where you hit the pedal hard, you could hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to edit it out. And I was like, nah, there's no reason to. So from very early, it was like, that's what we got.
Yeah, there was definitely an element of deprogramming. And then also with that, by virtue of it being heavily improvised, too much practicing could also lead you to ruin because, I had this great take, or you get demoitis where, that rough take we did, a couple weeks ago, I want to try to replicate exactly that whenever we have all the nice mics up and we're trying to get takes. And it just, that's a fleeting moment. And it took a lot of kind of reflection for me, or just, trial and error to say like, okay, that was that moment and that happened. There's another moment that will happen if you keep coming to it honestly and openly and responding instead of trying to navigate it in a particular way.
Yeah. And we recorded every rehearsal. So we were basically getting takes from the moment we conceived an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a couple tracks that were early on in that process. My favorite track, Prairies and Ghosts, was the one that we struggled the most.
Mm-hmm.
It took us probably 12 rehearsals of like, I think that might be the one, but let's keep doing it. Like that was the one where it was like, because that's a 20-minute, 3-part thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some of them were like the first couple takes.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, or even that, I think we didn't even talk about what we were going to play. You kind of set up the mics and just kind of started getting into it. And it was a take and it was like, oh, wow, that was fun.
Yeah.
That seemed to go pretty well.
Yeah, I think early on I had to realize that I'm not going to like it as soon as we do it.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we play it, I'm going to be like, I don't know. Because again, our challenge was never play the same thing twice or play anything you've ever played before. So we get to the end of like 15 minutes. I'm like, we just laugh like, all right, cool. I guess we'll listen back and see what we got.
Yeah. Don't try to be too analytical, or again, if we were going to do multiple takes, don't try to say, oh, this was great, do that again.
Got you. So in a live context then, when you're like performing these songs live, how much of the structure of the improv from like the original is making it to a live environment? Are you like trying to like learn and remember like what these structures were and then replicate them sort of in the same way but differently? Or are you just like, is it always just new songs every time you see us?
Landmarks, I would say.
Yeah. And we both kind of came into it. I think jazz was kind of, again, we didn't want to make jazz necessarily, but at least that idea of, hey, there's a melodic piece that is either going to start and end, or start the piece, or that we get to at the end somehow.
Yeah.
So I think whenever we started composing, that was an idea of, okay, let's start here. Let's do a whole bunch of things. And can we get back to that place again? So some of them, I think, kind of either kind of crest or dip, however you kind of view that energy or that momentum change.
Sure.
So that was helpful. And then I think as we were getting ready for like the release show and like doing some live stuff, once the takes were done, thankfully there was a lot of time between when we got the takes and when we did that. We kind of started writing new material in between that.
Yeah.
While like you're going through all the release stuff, sending it to streaming and getting CDs made and registering copyrights and all that fun stuff that you have to do. So it really was I don't remember anything I did here. Let's just try to figure out how to do something that resembles what we did. But yeah, it was fresh enough to not feel that pressure of, I really better go back and figure out how to retrace my steps on these.
Mm-hmm. With continuing this project, and you mentioned like working on new music and all this stuff, have you found like an identity starting to take shape that maybe wasn't there when you started, in terms of like what the project is, maybe thematically or musically? Like, how do you see yourselves like continuing to grow and doing new music different? Is it like, rather than like maybe trying to write different styles of music, is it more or less like, what new toys can we introduce to make different noise?
Kind of. Yeah. I think because when we first got together, I was trying to live loop and you were looping, and it just, without MIDI syncing, it never would have worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, first record, I'm not going to loop a single thing. You're going to do all the looping. So he's creating all the atmosphere and I'm playing live drums and electronics over top of it.
Mm-hmm.
This time around, I brought my looper in and I'm establishing some loops that don't rely on you creating rhythmic loops.
Mm-hmm.
So the roles are a little bit reversed. So I think we're kind of hitting that. We know we both can't loop rhythmic stuff at the same time. If you're going to loop something, it has to be ambient, and then I can be rhythmic, or I can do something atmospheric, and then you can be rhythmic.
Yeah, and that was the big aha moment for me whenever we started getting together. Was, I've been doing looping gigs, and I found the looper really inspiring, and that, hey, I can essentially be a composer in real time. I can dictate harmony, I can harmonize melodies, I can do whatever I want, as my imagination and the limitations of the technology provide.
Yeah.
So that was something that I wanted to bring to this, especially as a duo, as a way to not just sound like sort of jazzy noodling kind of things, but not doing loops that implied a certain meter or rhythm were really important, because then it didn't lock Mike into, hey, I have to stay with the loop and I have to be in time with the loop, because this is something that somebody's going to audibly pick up on. If like my one and the loop's one are different, it's going to sound like we're getting off and it'll sound like a mistake.
Yeah.
So like doing these things by like reversing loops to like take the attack off of notes, rethinking about how I built chords so that they didn't kind of have that traditional kind of harmony sense, so that they were more ambiguous, so that if the loop slid around the bar line, we could react and respond to it in real time. That was really like a big, okay, here's how we make this all play together, and we can still be free to improvise and play in the ways we want to play and not be beholden to the robot in the room.
Sure. In a live environment, how are you handling like monitoring? Is it just like off of the room? Are you doing in-ear stuff?
No.
Off the room?
We set that very early on. We should be able to play in any room for any number of people, any dynamic level. So a small guitar amp and a speaker for my pads. We need to be able to use that and do everything we want to do. So if the production gets bigger, cool. Never in-ears, never click, never anything where we're like we should be able to just plug in your guitar and I plug in my stuff and we can do exactly what we always do.
Yeah.
So I have a stage monitor that I put all my electronics through. All your stuff goes through one amp.
Yeah, it just keeps all the control with us too.
Yeah.
Like we don't need a really robust like front of house setup where, hey, if none of this is right, it's all going to crash and burn.
Sure.
So that was really important to making sure that worked. And then just again, like the amount of information you're given, it really encourages, just like for the listener, patience on our part, that, okay, you have to wait for the idea to develop. You have to, enjoy the space that's given to you, or if things like come in and out, like be very mindful of that. And there's almost like kind of a baton passing with a lot of the traditional roles that a band would have, be it timekeeping or harmony or melodic interjection or syncopation. all those different things that make arrangements exciting. We're kind of always in real time passing that back and not relying on, oh, okay, well, hey, here's all this extra stuff that's helping to prop us up that, we can more easily become isolated and our roles become less codependent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the fact that your amp can get overloaded, so we have to be careful.
Yeah, right.
Like, how much information do you throw into the amp? How loud can I play before it obliterates the whole mix? So it forces us to be listening to the sound we're producing really deeply.
Yeah,
because if you get any kind of rhythmic thing looped, I have to key in on it, no matter how many layers down is it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be able to hear it.
That's stuff that I always find really impressive is when I see bands that are either doing stuff with looping or even tracks. I've seen bands that might use some tracks and they don't use in-ears. They're just relying off of monitor volume. And I'm like, that is wild.
Yeah, right.
Like, you need to really be in like a pretty controlled environment to be able to like hear everything. I mean, imagine especially you, Mike, as a drummer, like, you might not be doing like big banging loud stuff, but the songs have dynamics where it does get louder. So I'm sure there's times where it's like all you're hearing is your fucking cymbals, and it's like,
well, I've taught myself to not listen to myself from the very beginning. Like, that's even with some other bands that I might trigger like a loop. I want to just listen to the loop, not a click. My biggest pet peeve is when I hear bands that are so locked to a click that they're not playing together. It's almost like it eats itself because everyone's playing to the click, therefore they're not listening to each other, and everything it's supposed to be airtight, but everyone's kind of swimming around this beat.
Yeah,
I can feel it. I think everyone in the audience can feel it, and you're just like, it's just not. They're not listening to each other.
Yeah,
and this is like, if you don't listen to me, I don't listen to you. We're just making noise.
Yeah, right.
Literally, it can become noise in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to just be conscious. If I hit this cymbal, I know where it's going to go. I use flat rides because it keeps everything in. I put stuff on my drums so they're muted. Again, because sometimes he might have his tiny little amp.
Yeah. Yeah. And just with that, I think both of us coming from like worlds where we gig in a lot of different contexts, that simplicity of the gear is really important. Not having to have a whole giant production. Like, I'm not, I have a pretty modest pedal board, and I'm trying to limit myself also so that there's not like a lot of analysis paralysis of like, oh, what do? I have every effect known to man at my feet. Must, or feeling some pressure that I have to get things in there because I brought it to the gig. It's really, really nice. And in a way where I'm curious as we keep doing it, what if I don't bring that thing that time that I used on this record? How do I respond to the track now? What do I do differently with this different toy I brought?
Yeah.
And all these different sounds that I can now make with this thing. Does it give it a new life? Does it take it to a different place? Does it have a different character? Does the story that we're trying to tell change? Those are like prompts that are exciting to me in this context. Yeah. So I feel like, again, like the less we pin it down and like the more, the less gear that we have to work with and streamline it, it keeps it like with us and our artistry that it's all just conduit for what we're doing.
From a guitar effects perspective, are you using like any like multi effects big box sort of like all in one motherfucker thing, or are you using like a bunch of like little guys you can kind of just swap in and out between things?
It's little guys for me.
You're a little guy.
I'm a little guy kind of guy. And I think the only thing that's really close, like there's a lot of like ring mod sounds on this, because again, Mike was like, find the weirdest pedal you have that again, like on any other gig, no one wants you to use.
Yeah.
So I was watching like a video of a guitar player that I like, and he was going through this ring mod pedal and all these presets it had and all these functions it could do. And that's the only thing that's maybe kind of like that, where it was like, oh, this is sort of like a whole box of weird. And
but it's still like one effect.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So that was kind of fun to just, okay, how can I use this box of weird to do things that don't sound like a guitar or that don't do that. But at the end, I really love the sound of guitar. Like, and I wanted that to be a part of it, not to be overly synthesized. And I like, especially with you playing acoustic drums, like there's a natural feel to those two instruments together that I think was really important. So it didn't get too far away and still was something that like people could approach and not be like, oh, this is just beeps and boops. Like, I'm out.
Yeah, it's gotta sound good. That's kind of the stipulation. I think originally when we talked, I wanted you to play more slide.
Yeah,
Like
that was something.
that was the sound, and yet we little of that. So that might be the next palette that we really dig into.
Yeah, that's been fun too. Like even twisting that, like as we look ahead to like new things, even whenever we do it, it's like I don't want it to sound like what you think slide guitar sounds like. I want it to be this crazy, like out there. You've never heard slide in this context, or here's a really unintuitive way to use a slide on a guitar.
Sure.
So that it's not just like, oh yeah, there's all your blues licks. Like, cool. Derek Trucks, hi. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, I think that it's probably, I'd imagine, just like a combination of things where it's like, you know, like, yeah, you've had steak before, but you haven't had steak like this, motherfucker.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the idea where it's like, I think that instruments, or not necessarily instruments, accessories, like a little slotty guy. I mean, they're used almost like they become like caricatures of themselves over time, and it's like, oh, that's the thing that you use for like blues or for like it's like 90s country rock or something like that, which, I mean, all that stuff fucking rules, don't get me wrong, but it's like, why not use it in a more like experimental way with cool effects, just to get like something that is almost emulating like a synthesized sort of sound, but it is an organic it's an organic what's the word I'm looking for? Organic I don't know, you're creating it organically.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
I think the other thing too, with using all the different sort of, accoutrement that we put into the mix, for me, it slows me down and makes me have to think musically, because I don't have like all my stock licks that I've built up in my years of doing everything. Your like go-to fills aren't there because, I have like this crazy ring mod on and it sounds horrible if I played like that. So now I really have to listen and think musically and slow down and be in the moment, not just on autopilot of like, if I do this here, it'll work.
Well, sure. It's like the when you're composing music that is like heavily based off of effects, those effects are the instrument. It's almost like a role reversal where now it's like the guitar is the accessory to the effect.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, the way that you approach different rhythm, chord, melody going through that pedal is going to change the way that you think about composing or writing or playing, all of the above. And I imagine that's probably very tantalizing.
Very, yeah.
For you.
Yeah,
you have a little glimmer in your eye.
It's fun, yeah.
I think there's also the part of where we each can step forward and take the lead. So I can kind of step forward, and then you can say, all right, well, let me just make a sound and see what happens. So you can kind of explore and discover sounds instead of having to commit. And if it sounds like shit, then don't do it again.
Yeah.
And same thing with me. Like if he gets all this atmospheric stuff, I can literally walk away from the drums and go find another instrument while that's happening. And then we can just let me try that. Does it sound cool? I mean, we probably laugh 20 times in that session where we're like, whoa, that was weird. Okay, let's move on to the next thing.
I'm interested also talking with you, Mike, about the approach of what is possible with an organic drum kit in terms of effects. Because you mentioned that you do have like a pad that you were playing.
Yep.
I don't know how crazy you ever want to get with like blending organics and electronics, but I imagine there's a lot of cool stuff that you could do with like triggers if you were ever interested in doing anything like that, if you're not already.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, originally I had a looper. I used to have a rack of effects and a looper, and I would do this stuff by myself. I would create atmospheric things and improvise drums over. So having a human being now take that role allowed me to say, okay, I'm just going to play drums, but I'm still going to make the drums sound weird and use different implements and play in a way that I never played before that makes me really uncomfortable. But now I have a pad, but it's not like a sample pad. It's a synthesis pad. It's the Nord drum pad.
Okay, yeah.
And I could run that through a simple looper and basic effects that are built into the mixer. So that is giving me some delay options. I have a couple other pads. So, and I also have something we haven't even touched yet, sensory percussion by D'Addario. It's triggers, but it's not triggers. It takes exactly the velocity that you play the drums and it sends it into MIDI world. So I can go into full on synthesis mode. That might be record 5, 6 when I get into that.
Are you familiar with a player named Eric Imprada?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, from Night Versus. He does like a lot of really, really cool stuff. You ever see the videos where he has like that gooseneck mic that he runs through like that Digitech whammy pedal where he'll like just put it on like cymbals or on his snare and like I really, really like his approach to like bringing in, I guess what we're talking about, like synthesis into live drumming.
Yeah.
And it's fun like listening to those Night Versus records because so much of it sounds like it's all like, oh, these are just like computer tracks. And then you see them play and you're like, oh, fuck, it's not computer tracks. He's actually doing it. Wild.
Yeah.
Very exciting stuff.
Yeah. He's doing that. Antonio Sanchez is doing that. Glenn Kochi. So there's a bunch of people really digging into it. I just don't want to have too many options. We want to limit ourselves. So we're going to add one. We add the pad for record 2. Cool. You know,
it's just that thing where it's like, it's like almost like it's just the two of you, but new toys consistently are coming into play. And it's like interesting too when like what those new metaphorical toys can do to the sound. Like who knows, maybe 4 records from now you will end up sounding like Animals as leaders.
Who knows?
Plan on it,
which is fine. As long as we get there naturally, you know, like the chord, the Nord pad gave us a totally different color. It's definitely a warmer. Ironically warmer. I don't know what it is. The first record is very cool. As soon as I brought that in, it was like, oh, now we're dealing with a different color right away. So it wasn't like I didn't want the instrument to be like what we're creating the whole record on. But as soon as I hit those pads, we're like, well, now we're in a different zone. Yeah, totally in a different zone. But we're still exploring our own voice. If I had all the gear set up all at once, it would be like, cool, I made a bunch of beats. Now we play over top of them. Like, what do we do here? You know, which I didn't want to do that. Yeah. Too many options and my kit's already ridiculous. It doesn't need to get any bigger.
Till we get a drum tech.
It's absurd.
So I have a question that I thought of for you, Mike. And this is something I've never asked anybody. I've never thought of this, but you seem like a good person to ask a question.
Bring it on.
It's weird. So if you could have an extra limb given to you, it could be one arm or one foot, which would you take as a drummer?
Does this arm include a hand?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. One extra hand or one, an arm, hand. Yes.
I would take an arm with 5 fingers so I could play keys.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's the next thing. I've got a bunch of little keyboards that I want to mess with, but I don't want to get stuck into this, like, I'm playing keys and drums world. So I
start doing like the Lewis Cole thing.
Yeah, that's
like he's like just like that. Really, I don't know. He's a psychopath.
Yeah, that's amazing, but it's kind of silly. I don't want to be like that.
It is. It's interesting. The thing that is really actually interesting about like a Lewis Cole is like his style of playing really lends to like novelty. And it's like really interesting when he does something that is less novelty and more serious, which is very rare because most of the time it's all like this air of like comedy in a weird way. And a lot of it is kind of like one note. And I don't mean that in a bad way because he can run circles around most people. Yeah. I don't know. An interesting mind, interesting brain. Yeah. Great player, but definitely has his own thing. And as a result, I mean, a lot of the time, if I hear something that he does, I might not even realize he's on it. And I'm like, that sounds like Lewis Cole, which is cool to have that.
Yeah, he's a true artist. I want to avoid like the one-man band gimmicky kind of shit.
Yeah.
That's I don't want to be like, whoa, he's so good at playing all that shit. Where I'd rather just hire a keyboard player, ultimately. But I like the idea of having that sound. Maybe I want to play a mini log just for the sound and it becomes part of my drum set. Cool. But I don't want it to be like, look at me play bass lines and grooves. That's I'm not a circus freak. That's
and that's like a defeating, like diminishing returns. There's always somebody who has like a better sideshow in that world. I think, yeah, as we get older as musicians, you're like, yeah, there's somebody who just does it at a level that you'll never compete with. It's a race you'll never win.
Yeah. But a lot of the times, like, that doesn't even particularly matter because, like, there's a lot of, like, talented artists. Like, again, we keep on bringing up animals as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely acknowledge that they're incredibly talented players and good composers, and I don't give a fuck about that band.
Yeah.
I just find the music, like, really, like, sterile
Sure.
to me.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I know a lot of people that love that stuff, and I would never be like, that band sucks. It's just not for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, regardless of, like, however talented or whatever, like, it's not clicking with me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'd much rather probably listen to some, like, dog shit punk rock thing recorded in a toilet bowl than that personally. But that's just me.
Yeah.
No,
you know?
I agree. And I think that's why having some musicality to what we did was so important, that it didn't turn into, look how good we are. We can just make all these noises and all these sounds and look at how fast we could play or how loud we could play.
But when it gets boring, I think once you compose something and commit to it, and then you have to repeat it, I'm done. You know, let's have an idea, but let's explore the idea. Like airtight reproductions of compositions, I'm just not.
Yeah,
it's not impressive to me, especially because computers exist. You know, like I don't care how fast you are, you know, because the machine's always faster.
I remember when I was a kid, you know, I would listen to a record for the first time and I would think about like a room of guys or gals or a mix of both, you know, doing the thing in a room. I would like visualize what this looks like. And now so often when I like listen to new music, I just visualize like one person in front of a computer, just like, you know, just like fixing things. But sometimes I don't. Sometimes I hear something. I'm like, oh, this sounds like a band playing. And like, for me, I think that like it seems like people really get hung up on like the studio recording being this like gospel, this holy testament of their work, when really it's just like, it should just be, that's what the song sounded like that day you recorded it.
100%.
And then whenever you play it live, it sounds different. If it's not different, then what's the point? What's the point?
Just play the record.
Yeah.
Right.
Turn on the CD. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting too, like whenever we think about social media, and I see that trend, like to me, it makes sense. And social media is great in that you're able to capture these really spontaneous, unprofessional moments and put them out that, oh, hey, here I am today. And I gravitate toward that content that, you know, hey, I'm famous musician XYZ and I'm just in my house playing today. Here's something I came up with. This is cool. That content excites me instead of the really produced stuff. But yeah, we haven't seemed to like transition in that part of the music business. It still is this hyper perfected, you know, airtight arrangement all the time. And yeah, I find that interesting.
I think that the issue that you run into with this conversation is that the vast majority of people are not artists. And for big, talented, I guess talent's irrelevant, big, popular, that's a better word.
Yeah.
Popular touring acts that have to like maintain some certain sense of an image.
Sure.
I think it can be really, they almost can't like afford to have a bad show.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So it's like everything needs to be on rails. Everything has to be on a track. So all of the people that aren't artists that are just, they know that song, they want to hear that song the way that they heard it. They probably don't even care if it's like, oh, you know that they're not actually playing, right? This is all backtracks. I don't care. It's them on a stage and I got my pictures for Instagram.
Right.
It's
and that's
very diminishing.
That's the double-edged sword.
But that's what a lot of it is.
Yeah. How many bands had bad shows in the 60s and 70s, but they just had a bad show for like however many people were in that room that night? Now you have a bad show and somebody posts it online and they tag you. Well, now it's gone everywhere, and everybody in the world knows you had a bad show, and they're saying, "Oh, should I buy tickets to that?" That concert. It's terrifying.
It's not all like this, but so much of it, especially for like the younger rock bands now, you're a touring t-shirt tent. And like, you know, the label's paying to put you on a road to sell those shirts to pay for your album, you know? And if you don't play well, you're not selling the merch.
Mhm.
So there's a good chance. I mean, not saying I've heard this or anything from anybody, but bands that might not want to play the tracks, it's like the label's like, hey, we're paying for this. You're doing this is it.
Yeah.
You're playing the tracks. It has to be
Oh, man.
this way so you could sell the fucking shirts. You want to be on the road. You want to be on the magazine. You want the music videos. This is how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's like at the end result is like a very sterilized, boring product.
It can be, yeah.
And that's why
Definitely
no one wants to pay for it. I mean, think about no one wants to pay for music because MP3s sound like shit and all the records have no life to them. So no one cares. But people still buy Miles Davis records. They still buy Beatles records. They still buy Pink Floyd records because it's human beings playing art. And those bands spent years sucking. Years. The Beatles, how many gigs did they do before they played a real show? I mean, hundreds. So I think there's no patience anymore. I mean, I started out playing in rental halls with my punk bands and we sounded like shit. But all my friends had an amazing time because it was people, energy in a room. We're going to mosh. We're going to play bad versions of Nirvana and Helmet songs and just freaking rock out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no patience for that anymore. And there's no space for younger musicians to suck.
Yeah.
Like we expect them to be great.
Yeah. I think that a lot of it is sort of, I'd imagine, this is my hypothesis, is that the internet has really helped create sort of like a FOMO, fear of missing out type of thing where it's just like, oh, hey, like, you know, my friends are in a band and they're playing shows and they put out a record. So now I'm going to do it. And the ease of doing it is, it's very, very easy to look like you have your shit together now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people just want to have their shit together or look like they have their shit together so they can get like a good opportunity. You know, like when you're like in a band now submitting to like play a festival or thing like that, like they'll ask you like how many followers you have before asking for a link to your music.
Yeah.
It's like they want to know like how popular you are before even checking out the art. It's like it's gotten all flip-flopped.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because like all of these promoters that do these festivals and shit like that, it's just like they don't want to take the time to curate something. They just want people to show up.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, this band has 100,000 followers on Instagram. They're going to sell some tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, that band probably just paid like $1,000 to get some bot to get them 100,000. It's like, it's all everybody. It's just, I think that, everybody would benefit a lot from like slowing down and not needing so much, going on a bit of like a social diet, if you will, instead of like trying to just like consume and just be seen so much. It's, says the guy with a podcast.
Well, how many months did we get together every week and not really have something that we were ready to play?
Yeah.
A year? And we're both professional, quote unquote, musicians. We probably got together for a year before it was like, I think we're ready to play a show now.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's good. Yeah. And to get back to like that project, I think that's exactly why it was so satisfying for me. It was art because we wanted to make art because we felt strongly about something we were doing and it was satisfying to us. And okay, if nobody likes it, I had a good time. So cool. Mission accomplished. Like, I did something today that made me happy. I can go to bed and be excited to do that thing again tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that really has to be the desired end result is like self-satisfaction and just being proud of what you do. Mm-hmm. And then if other people like it, that's great. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if you're making art with the sole purpose of just trying to get people to like you, there's so many easier ways to get people to like you than making art. That's actually probably one of the dumbest things you can do if you're trying to like connect with other people.
Design
like,
an app, yeah, or go do a dance on the internet.
Yeah, there's much better things to do than like try to do this because
that's a good point. Art is lonely, and I think we've forgotten that to be an artist is lonely. It's not. Here's my beautiful art. Come on, please love me, praise me. That's not how many artists died miserable. Yeah. If you really think about it, Van Gogh. I mean.
Well, and think about how many times I know this is my experience, and I feel like we had a similar experience. Even making this record, that 1 week we'd say, "Oh, that was really cool," and then 2 or 3 weeks later we'd listen back. I hate all of this. This all sucks. I'm horrible. What am I doing? I should go do anything else.
Which
God,
means do it again, do it again, do it
Yeah.
again. Keep going.
So it is that unsure, that subjectiveness of art. It's not comfortable. There's no part. You get some nice pats on the back, and we're really lucky that I'm sure that's probably why we keep doing it, is we've gotten enough of those pats on the back at the right time from the right people to like, oh, okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and keep soldiering on.
Mhm.
You got to. There's a lot of famine in between all that. You got to be okay with.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the future of this project, what do you got on the horizon? Any live events or things you want to promote for the good people of the internet?
Yeah. Nope, nothing booked now, but very excited now that this is out to find some more opportunities to showcase it. Like I said, I've been working on stuff for a follow-up that we're excited to start tracking hopefully in the next couple weeks here. And that hopefully will come to your ears sometime soon if you need another one. And just continuing to explore what we can come up with together and what exciting
Yeah,
things.
we were just talking recently, like it's hard to find venues for this to translate properly. So let's create our own. So we're going to start streaming from my studio and
cool.
just kind of force ourselves to perform in our own
So
bubble.
is there a stubborn unwillingness to compromise what the live representation of this project is?
I wouldn't say stubborn, but
Question.
Because I relate. I'm just saying.
There's definitely, I think we both feel there's an optimal way to experience it. And it is pretty different. Like, we were very lucky that for our release show, everybody got together and agreed to let us have our way with it and do it the way we wanted to do it. Because there were a lot of moving parts and pieces that I think most, local acts, they're not demanding that these things be accommodated.
Yeah, we can't play for just your general bar where like people randomly walk in. So it has to be curated. It's more of a, like, I want to get involved in art studios, that kind of a scene, galleries. I think it would anywhere where people are going to step out of reality is where this would translate. It's just where are those spots? We're still trying to find.
I mean, I had mentioned earlier that it's music that obviously requires patience. So you almost need like a patient space for that, a space where the people that are there are going to engage with what you're doing and not be like eating a pretzel.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Or something.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's a really good pretzel, I don't want to.
I originally had the thought of putting a bunch of percussion instruments in the room and have everyone be, because I didn't want it to be like, come watch us on stage perform. More of like, everyone's in this weird experience together. So I thought, let me put some wind chimes over here and some shakers over there. But a good friend of mine said that'd be the worst decision ever. But
yeah, you'd have to. all it takes is like the wrong ding dong to show up.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, like, you could put like a stipulation, like, if you are an asshole, we can punch you.
Yeah, we will.
Right. Yeah, your freedom will be revoked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to figure it out. And after we kind of have extolled like the bad sides of the internet and social media, I think part of the streaming thing that we're excited about is, like you said earlier, there's an audience definitely for what we're doing.
Oh yeah.
And thankfully, people we've sent the record to or that have experienced it in our circles, we've gotten a lot of nice feedback on it, which is great. We really appreciate that. But I think there's a lot of people out there that would like to hear what we're doing and connect with us, and we're hoping to leverage that network to say, hey, you don't have to be right here in Pittsburgh, PA to find out about it, or we don't necessarily have to slug it out in a car for a couple years and make all the rounds. And then maybe your friend will have gone that weird Tuesday night and saw it and said, oh, by the way, maybe next time they come around, you might like this.
Yeah.
To connect with that audience and try to get some people excited about what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that using like streaming and the internet in general to get your art out there is a very good idea. I think in a lot of ways, the concept of like touring is kind of outdated in some fashions. I mean, I understand that it's like it's a lifestyle for certain styles of music, and it's kind of like a rite of passage for those, especially in like your punk and metal DIY communities, things like that. Like I get it. There's a whole romance about like getting in the van and going on the road and meeting people from meeting other underground weirdos in different parts of the world and playing all the worst basements and all that. I get it. But I think that like for some things it's just not really necessary. It's like, is there a point of driving 6 hours to do my experimental art on a Tuesday night in like Grand Rapids, Michigan? Like what, unless like people in that city that are like, oh, okay, like I actually know people here and we're going to like facilitate like a cool event. We have friends, like it's more of a thing, but just like taking those gambles now for some things is really, really hard, especially if you're like, we're all like 70 years old, right? We're not fucking like 15 years old and like
I'm not
excited about things. Yeah, can't do it. It's just like the
12 hours you spend driving, we could spend 12 hours making art. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, what is our investment in it? Is it worth it to drive that far to play for an hour for 30 people that maybe 5 of them will get it? Or can we spend that time to get the next record done? I'd rather have 10 records done in the next 5 years than have played 300 shows personally.
Yeah. And like the virtues of that, like you'll never replace, and I think we all are craving in-person, analog, organic experiences with people. I don't think you'll ever be able to surpass that electronically, of that. Like I came to your town and we see each other as human beings, and I made some art that you felt really seen by.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you see me for making that art and expressing that and having that connection. But just trying to maximize your odds of finding those people.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about, again, like with like art and live music, what is so great about it is being able to do it in front of people. That's, fuck the studio stuff. I mean, it's fun, but again, that's just a snapshot of that day.
Yeah.
The idea is I really just want to be able to play music in front of people as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that's where the idea of touring becomes, well, I just want to keep playing shows and I can't play Pittsburgh every fucking week. Well, you could, but you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But you could. And it's like, okay, so almost I could see like for some bands where it's like it's made to be live, it's like almost touring as a necessity just so you can continue to perform shows and not have like a fatigue of wearing out your local scene, being hometown heroes.
Absolutely. No, that's totally it. But you can't, like, me as a guitar player, especially, like, there's something physical that happens, like when a tube amp is cranked up, or it doesn't have to be a tube amp, but just an amp's cranked up, its sound is hitting your body.
Oh yeah.
And you're experiencing that and feeling that in a moment. And that's, you can't replicate that. There's no studio recording I've ever, or even a live record that I've listened to that can replicate that feeling. And I think that's, just finding those people that want to have that experience.
Yeah, you need to actually do like physical damage to yourself.
Your pound of flesh.
Yeah. I need to like hear my like eardrums like vibrating. That's the secret to good tone. Is it like vibrating my brain?
Yeah.
Physically.
Oh man.
Am I having a physical response?
That's the only way it works. You'll never get it from a studio thing.
Yeah, I don't think we've talked about it, but in my mind, I want us to put out so much output that the invitations start to come versus us knocking on doors like, hey, can we come play your room? And we might sell 10 tickets.
Yeah.
I want the output to be so interesting that it's like, let's bring those two knuckleheads who put out 10 records in 3 years and let's have them be the featured artists. Like that's kind of my ultimate goal, is I wanted to be invited because what we're bringing is so interesting versus like just beating down
I mean,
doors.
I think that's the
Vacuum
other
salesman.
Yeah, that's with art. I think the end goal is to always get to a point where like, you are being invited to things because those are people that care about what you do. And if they're bringing you in, they're going to put in the extra little bit of effort to make sure that it's worth everybody's time versus, again, you're knocking on a door, you convince some bar to give you an open Tuesday night and they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You know, nobody. It's like, why are we even doing
Just
this?
as long as they're slinging beers or people are paying cover or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We have enough of those gigs, so I agree with that too. Where I have those gigs where I got to play a couple fan favorites to keep people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've been playing these songs my entire life. You know, they're the kind of like new American songbook. You know, you know all those tunes. But yeah, this is a place, again, to leave all that at the door. There's no expectation of that. You're not going to hear us play any of those songs because we feel obligated to you, the audience member, for showing up. No, this is a place to create and to do something that's we find interesting and fulfilling as artists. And I think that's a really fun outlet to have.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, going to be wrapping up our conversation here today, gentlemen. I want to thank you both for coming on. Mike, Tim, LUNR ECCOS.
Mm-hmm.
Before we let everybody on the internet go about the rest of their day, do you want to let people know where they can find your ding dong sounds?
Yes, all my ding dong sounds. You can find me at Tim Vitula. That's V as in Victor, I, T as in Tom, ULLO. Everywhere, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, whatever, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to things.
Yeah.
And then we have a Bandcamp. It's dawsonvitulo.bandcamp.com, something like that. But if you find us, it's linked through all of our stuff, where you can get a CD of the record if you want to increase your fan support beyond just streaming for those few fractions of a cent.
Yeah. Do you have a CD player? I have one in my car.
I don't. I can't. I have a copy, but I can't listen to it. Makes a great coaster, though. Great coaster. Where are you? Yeah.
Everywhere. At Mike Dawson Drums, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. A lot of nerdy drum stuff, and also links to the record. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So the record is LUNR ECCOS. LUNR ECCOS. That is the record.
Yeah. You did ask about that. We did have a story for the name. The record's kind of like a commentary on our relationship with technology and kind of innovating and doing these things. You know, do we do them for the sake of making people's lives better or just for our own hubris to say that we can? And one of the thread lines that was going on in the news, we were talking about the LUNR module that epically failed.
Yeah.
We were kind of laughing about that. Like, you know, what are we doing here, guys? Like, we could use this money in so many great ways.
Yeah.
So that we kind of took it from that piece. And then one of the pedals that really opened up the way we were looping and improvising is called the ECCOS, ECCOS. So it was kind of a nod to that of like,
oh, cool.
It kind of, this was the means by which we were able to realize this project and put it together. So
hell yeah.
It's fun.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I want to thank you both again for being here. I'll be back again next week with another episode. Same time, same place, same channel. You know the drill. My name is Brian Sykes House. Start the Beat is the podcast. 2025 is the year. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Take care of the people around you. Peace out. We did it. That was a podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, baby.